I'm deciding how much I want to take credit for something that I really should take credit for. How much of an Evan Hansen should I be in this moment?
There are some musical theater creators in the room, and you've had a long-standing successful collaboration with Mr. Pasek. And I'm wondering how you would advise people to find collaborators that they might work successfully with, and what makes a songwriting partnership shine.
For the collaboration that I'm in, um, uh, I have found that for me, myself and my collaborator Benj, we're actually really very different people. We come from sort of very different backgrounds, very different walks of life, very different. I wouldn't say very different tastes, but just sort of very different on paper. We are prone to have healthy bouts of let's say intellectual sparring or healthy back and forth. What are the nice ways of saying that we fight sometimes? It is all so the way we often talk about it is that first of all that fighting and that sort of that push and pull first of all indicates that we both really care, that we're both really invested in the creative outcome of what we're fighting for, what we're pushing for. It's a sign that we're both very invested in what this outcome is going to be, of what that lyric or that melody or that song or that idea or that character wants to become. And that wherever we arrive at is not where we would either have us arrived at on our own. And that instead of sort of even meeting in the idea that I'm here and he's here, and instead of meeting in the middle, we're kind of pulling each other even forward to a place that's not even meeting in the middle. It's meeting somewhere middle plus that we would never have come to on our own. So I think the encouragement I would find that I would give is, I think we have a way of looking at the world in a somewhat similar way. We would see shows or watch conversations among people or look at our peers, and we would have really similar tastes in a certain way, but also have really different life experiences. And I think those differences have really served us well. So I think not being afraid of finding someone that might on paper feel vastly different from you, but if you can find those points of connection, those differences may really serve you and balance you. We have really wide personal differences and some professional ones too, and I think those have served us well and really balanced us in every way, from creatively to business, how we operate day to day, and who's organized, who's all over the place, who runs with ideas, who keeps us grounded. We kind of have that yin and yang, and I think it's served us. It's also made us pull our hair out from time to time, but we've enjoyed the up and down of it.
Two of the show's themes are social media and mental health. And since the Broadway debut in 2016, the evidence has just piled up about the dangers of social media for the mental health of young people. So I'm wondering what conversations you would like parents to have with their children after seeing your show.
It's definitely something that's constantly shifting, and it's definitely something that even, we started writing the show in 2009, 2010, 2011, in that sort of time frame, and so much has even come out since then. A main song that this character Evan Hansen in the show sings is called "Waving Through a Window." It expresses his loneliness, his sort of desire to connect to community, and it's meant as a metaphor, obviously, of looking at life on the from the outside looking in. But we also sort of meant it as a metaphor of viewing life through your phone and sort of viewing life through social media, and how truly lonely that can feel. And if anyone who sees the show, you'll notice that even scenically, the show goes from a surrounding of digital screens and life that exists sort of in the internet and surrounded by the internet and screens and feeds, to a more natural setting. The show ends in an orchard, and I think and another arc in the show is Evan going from sort of viewing the life of his community and the people around him through a phone, through screens, through connections that are less than authentic, to finding an authentic connection with his mother, to finding an authentic connection with himself. And so I think that our hope is that people will see the show and realize that in this connected age, I mean, that was the question that we wanted to write about initially, was in a connected age where we're more connected than ever, when we can easily access each other with the click of a button, with the tap of a screen. How do we feel more alone than ever?
The term window in Waving Through a Window, that's a double meaning of both like being on the outside of the school and a window on his computer screen.
Exactly, or in your phone. Exactly. Like tapping on the glass is like, I'm knocking on the window wanting to get in. I'm tapping on my phone. You know what I mean? I'm not part of this thing. I feel far away from it. Right. Exactly. But I think, I mean, the thing that, again, that central question in the show was, why, and in the most connected age that we've ever lived in, are we seemingly less connected than we've ever been? Why we feel more lonely than we've ever felt? So I think that question is one that we're grappling with in the show, and then one that we hope audiences, and especially parents and children, will grapple with as they leave the show. And it's certainly, you know, as you alluded to, the evidence continues to come out more and more, how damaging for mental health, especially for young people, social media and smartphone usage is.
Social media obviously can be a force for evil. It can make us disconnected, but it can also, you know, connect us. It's such a double-edged sword. And even going back to you talking about beginning your collaboration, I feel like so many people found you and fell in love with your music through YouTube, you know, like that's the way that I was introduced. And it was like cabarets, yes, but it was filmed cabarets where I was getting to experience Courtney Wolfson and all of the wonderful English kids, singing all of that music. So do you feel like, are composers being discovered in the same way now as they were, you know, just even 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's okay. I want to say two things in response to that. One, I want to just say on the response to your first part about just saying the good and the bad of it. It's like, it's, you know, we've often thought about it as just like, it's just another reflection of us as a people, as a society, that it can be used for good. And like, there are even two moments in Dear Evan Hansen, the sort of, although there is built-in irony to it, the end of Act 1, this song "You'll Be Found," even though there's an irony to the entire thing, which is that there is a lie at the center of it. The idea that something beautiful can be built from this, and a community can come together, something beautiful can be built online, like full stop. That is true. It can then also turn sour, and people can attack, and it can turn awful online and, you know, eat itself alive. That can also happen. It's really just how we use this powerful tool. It's a reflection of us as a society. But yes, to your point, it can be used in a beautiful way and in a connective way. And to your point, when we first started writing songs, so much of the way that we were discovered, or that our songs got out there, was through YouTube or through Facebook. And these were new tools at the time. But much like those, I feel like even for me, the music that I'm discovering now is through TikTok and through Instagram. So I feel very much, and like even on some certain projects that I'm working on now, where we're turning to younger songwriters or other maybe voice actors or voice talents to work on things. That's how we're discovering people, is through TikTok and through Instagram. So I feel like it's still is working, and it's even just easier to be discovered in a certain way, because it's just like, I'm amazed at how talented people are, and I feel like I'm now very like, I'm a Luddite. I don't know how to use it on TikTok. I'm like not on TikTok. I mean, I'm like, I creep around on it, but like I'm not a TikTok like I'm not a content generator on TikTok. So like I'm very much like, oh, I'm now out of the game. But like at the time, we were on YouTube posting our songs, posting our videos, and that's how we got discovered. And now there's amazingly talented kids out there putting their songs out there on TikTok, on Instagram, etc. And I feel like it's very much the same, but I'm also noticing the same trap, which we fell into as well, which is it becomes the end game. It becomes like you start creating solely for that platform. And then I remember we got this advice from another composer who was like, hey, you need to write a show. You need to write a musical. You guys are kind of like writing these songs for cabarets and for YouTube, but you need to write a show. You need to write there's instant gratification in writing a song and putting it up there, and you get feedback. And I'm seeing the same thing happen now again with that new generation. They're so talented, they're so good, but it's like people writing for TikTok, and now the followings are even huger. It's like you get millions of followers, millions of views, all those things. But then it's like, what does it lead to? And by the way, it's leading to people getting discovered, and people are getting contracts and record deals and all those things. So it's definitely worthwhile for people, but I'm also seeing that sometimes people are getting stuck in that I'm just generating more TikTok content, but is it leading to, if you want to be a musical theater songwriter, then eventually breaking out of that and writing a show, writing a full-length musical, like learning those ropes as well, which is definitely advice that I needed to have given to me when I was that age or in that phase of my career.
Still YouTube to an extent, but really it's like TikTok and Instagram, like you were saying. And now it's even shorter form content, where a YouTube video, you might watch, 10 minutes of a cabaret, 40 minutes of a cabaret. You're now looking at 60 to 90 seconds, usually on TikTok. So I have like a million different thoughts here. One is, how great is it that the process feels a bit more democratized, that it's like People's Choice Awards. People are discovered by algorithms instead of just like gatekeeper powers that be. Like, it's easier to discover people. But by the same token, like you said, it's easy to fall into that trap of just doing it for the clicks, doing it for the views, and creating that short form content. So my question is, given that, I certainly have a sense as an artist that like people's attention spans are so incredibly short now. Has that impacted the way that you approach projects, the way that you write, like the structure of shows even?
Good question. First of all, I do agree with you that it's like, even at the time that when I was first coming up as a songwriter, I remember it felt like having written a song cycle that we got licensed by other colleges via Facebook of like writing to other people and on YouTube. It felt like, whoa, you went outside the system because we hadn't gotten it produced off Broadway. So now especially, like it feels, I think it's fantastic that there is a real true democratization, given that like anyone, anywhere, look, there's still disadvantages. Like if you don't have a phone or you don't have access, there's always going to be access issues. But the fact that most anyone, anywhere with talent and with a phone can put their stuff online and it can be discovered, and you don't have to have the privilege of getting your show produced off Broadway or by a nonprofit or by something somewhere, like that is great. I think that's really good. And because we can all point to the issues of why it's hard to get yourself to New York City, or why it's hard to get yourself on a nonprofit's season, or produced by a reading produced by a producer, etc. There are access issues abounding there. So I think it's great. Full stop. But to the question of the attention span thing, it is interesting. Like, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about the connection there, but I do think generally that everyone is just approaching things as things should be shorter. And I don't know if that is, I don't know. I have never thought about that's because of like attention spans shorter because of like quicker bites on social media. But I definitely, as we're writing now, it definitely feels like I'm conscious of not necessarily minute count, but definitely conscious of like, all right, if we can say what we need to say and do the job we need the song to do and not overstay our welcome, we should do that. I do hear people saying, could this be a one act? And like, in the commercial theater space, there's always the question of, well, do they want, producers will want an intermission so they could sell things, or the theater owners will want, there's all that discussion. But, there's generally a feeling that audiences don't want to stay at the theater longer than 2 hours. That is something that's in the air. And I don't know, I haven't thought about that direct trickle down from like social media, but it's out there. I'm not that conscious of it moment to moment writing, but it does feel out there.
I like to imagine myself an amateur historian of Broadway. And so this is a question I often ask about shows, and I'm interested in what you think. In the genealogy of Broadway, who are Dear Evan Hansen's parents and who are its children?
Oh my. Oh. I might need to ask you what you think. I mean, I guess its parents are next to normal.
Okay.
In terms of, I'm also so scared answering this question because it's like, then it's like I'm supposing something, or I'm comparing. Like
I think
like,
it's an excellent answer. Thinking about
I approach this with all humility and all everything. When Benj and I, we were fellows with the Dramatists Guild Foundation, which is a fantastic organization that we're now board members of, but we were fellows when we first moved to New York City, which means we had the chance to study with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, who are incredible composer lyricists who've written some of our favorite shows, that we've in the canon, and as part of that program, not only did we study with them, but then we had to do sort of an internship on an apprenticeship on a show, and the one that we got assigned was to be apprentices to Tom Kitt and Brian Yorkey on the off-Broadway second stage production of Next to Normal. And so we were like, getting coffees and preparing scripts and binders and things on Next to Normal. So.
And you had the same director.
Yes,
right?
exactly. We had the same director, Michael Greif. It was
second stage.
Second stage. It was dealt with mental health, psychological, sort of contemporary musical. There always felt like there were connections, in those ways. So
are there children too? Is Be More Chill a child of Dear Evan Hansen? Are there others that you would say?
Be More Chill. So I feel like we know and love Joe. Be More Chill is a cousin or a brother, I don't know I don't know who a child is.
It's all right. It's a tough question.
Yeah, Be More Chill is a brother or a cousin. We're in the family though. We're in the family.
All right. Terrific. Here's Catherine.
Yeah, I was saying cousin under my breath and waiting for you to be like, yeah, it's a sibling, it's a cousin. And I was like, that's right, we're all in the family.
Family holidays, we're absolutely there together, no question.
Totally. Well, I know, and I was like, I don't know, maybe Barlo and Bear are children.
I mean, we call them our children. We are weird. I'm sure we're old enough to be their parents. So
no, you aren't.
No, definitely. First of all, definitely are. We call ourselves their fathers to them.
Abigail Barlo and Emily Bear are two incredible up-and-coming musical theater, pop, all of the above composers. They are Grammy Award winners. They wrote the Bridgerton musical, largely on TikTok, largely online. I fell madly in love with the process, their talent. Emily Bear also very casually just played keys for Beyonce's Renaissance tour. Abigail Barlo is an incredible pop singer, musical theater human. So the combo of them is just magic, and you should definitely follow both of them.
And
Moana 2?
Correct. They've got a big project coming out. They wrote all the songs for Moana 2, which was a TV series until boom, it just got turned into a feature animated film. So that's coming out this year.
The understatement of the century to say that global perception of like everything has changed in the last 10 years, but especially the last 5 years. Among those, I think, or in the mix of that, is the perception of Evan in Evan Hansen and his likability, and whether, you need a likable hero. It's so interesting because I've been working on new musicals for the past couple of years, and it's such a delicate balance of like, not every character needs to be incredibly likable. It's okay to have complex human beings, but I know I have witnessed on the outside looking in, sorry, had to.
Yeah.
Perception shifting in terms of Evan, and I'm just curious how that has felt on your end. Would you approach anything differently now, or, yeah, just can you sort of speak to that?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's interesting. I think that in look, the very I think I can answer this question through the sort of origins of this musical, which were, we originally wanted to write this story based on a real story and some elements of a few different real stories about the way we saw some people in our lives responding to a tragedy or tragedies, and the way that it seemed like they needed to, in a certain sense, insert themselves into those tragedies, or make themselves part of them, or sort of glom onto them. There were other terms that had been floated around, like grief porn, or like the idea that something bad had happened in someone's world, and it felt like, how am I connected to that? And this was based on some real things that happened. One thing that happened in Benj's life, and then a less connected, but another thing that happened in my life. And we approached it initially in a very cynical way. We sort of were like, what is wrong with our generation that we are so screwed up that this is how we react? From, everyone my age was sort of writing their college essays about how 9/11 had changed their lives, and sort of being like, wait, hold on. There were people who really were affected by 9/11, but not everyone. Like, or like someone had died in a high school, and suddenly people were acting like it was their best friend. And we really were approaching it with a lot of judgment and a lot of cynicism. And as we started to write that version of the musical, it was judgmental, and it was cynical, and it was really uncomfortable and like hopeless, honestly. And as we started writing it more, we sort of said, hold on a second, we're really judging all these characters, and we're really we're going to leave the audience with no hope. What if we take a different look at this? What if we look at what state might a character be in, might a person, might a human being be in, that they're in such pain and such lack of connection and community, that when given when in this circumstance, that they might make a choice, a wrong choice, a questionable choice. Could we ever see ourselves in their shoes, that they might make this choice out of pain, out of desperation, out of this deep longing to belong and to be part of something, that they would delude themselves and others. And that felt real and complicated and painful and heartbreaking, and like a journey that a character could go on and come through and come out on the other side of, and could ultimately teach us and show us that we are not defined by our worst moments. And that's a journey that we were interested in, and a story that we thought was worth telling. And the idea that we're not defined by our worst moments is something that we just really strongly believed in. And the idea of writing a complicated character, I think some of my favorite musicals are about complicated characters who are on a path and then take the wrong turn and then find their way back. Not every musical is that, certainly, but many are. And I think we've like hit a certain moment in the course of global history and our country's history, where I think like lying and truthfulness and those things like sort of like and we can talk about politics and things and whatever in our country, and why that maybe was right in the crosshairs, why that maybe shifted things a little bit. But I definitely am gonna always be interested in. I want musicals to always be able to be somewhat complicated and somewhat messy, as long as they're still hopeful, as long as there's optimism at the end of the trail. And so I think we maintain that feeling about Evan and his journey.
So I want to ask you about Easter eggs. When Brian Yorkie was here to talk about Next to Normal, he said they definitely put them in. So the Goodmans, good men, lived on Walton Way because that's the that's the classic TV show about wholesomeness. They pick names to have symbols, and it's up to us to find them. And I'm wondering to what extent you did that. I have a theory, and you're welcome to shatter it. But one of the ways that we know that meaning that the show is aware that Evan is fooling people, is that the first three letters on the cast are Con, C-O-N. Anything there? No.
Look, I'm deciding how much I want to take credit for something that I really shouldn't take credit for. How much of an Evan Hansen should I be in this moment? No. I like this theory.
Okay.
It's not a theory that I can take credit for, but you know what? You should talk to Stephen Levinson. When we landed on the name Connor Murphy, I said, guys, this is a little weird for me because I went to high school with someone named Connor Murphy. And no one seemed to care, and they were like, this is his name and whatever. And I was like, can we please change the name? And they're like, no, it was like a number of things. We finally landed on a name that everyone liked. And I was like, this. So anyway, I actually went to my high school 20th anniversary, 20th reunion, like this fall. And Connor Murphy was there. And he was like, hey.
Yeah.
I was like, hi. He was like, so. And I was like, yeah, like, he's like, it's not weird, it's fine. I was like, okay, cool. Like, it wasn't about you. And he was like, I didn't think so. I had happened to meet Stephen Schwartz at an event somewhere, and done the classic thing of like handed my CD to him, being like, I'm a writer too, but I'm not like so pathetic. But there is a real generosity of spirit among all the writers that are my heroes that I've known. Like, there's so little competition because everyone just wants this art form to survive because we all love it so much. So Lynn and Steve, Stephen Schwartz, etc., all those folks, Jeff Marks, Rhode Avenue Q, Bobby and Kristen Lopez, they have all just like sat down with us and given us advice. And Stephen Schwartz, when I was in college, he sat down one day and decided to write us a 7-page email with notes on every song and was like, you said you wanted to hear from me. I hope that's the case because I have a bunch of notes. Like, you guys are really talented, but you don't know what perfect rhyme is. And here's what it is. And you guys are really talented, but like these words don't scan at all on that melody. You know what I mean? Like, and we were like, fair enough. Like, this is amazing. So it was just a lot of like just input, taking notes from a bunch of different places. And then just a lot of studying shows. I mean, that's the other amazing thing that you can do, which I'm sure you do, which is just like, going to Lincoln Center in New York, where we were living at the time, and watching old tapes of musicals, and taking the input of studying the musicals that you loved and what works and what doesn't. I mean, I feel like I'm still doing that. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to study. Every time I go to write something new, I feel like I'm going and being like, what other songs are like this? What worked about them? Why, like, how do they keep finding something new, somewhere new to go? Still feel like I'm always learning or trying to learn.
My question is about musical style on like a very technical level. You're a person who has written things like Dogfight, which like Some Kind of Time, we have like, cut all our strings, we'll be kings for an evening. Like this super jazzy harmony with these like descending minor sevenths in the left hand. And then you also are a writer who's written like, look out, 'cause here I come. Right? Like just like pop, 4 chords, let's get everybody involved and give them really clear pop harmony to follow. What is the difference in the way that you use music to communicate things depending on the kind of style that you're writing in?
Yeah.
And does it change at all?
Yeah, no, it definitely changes. I mean, it's definitely project dependent and definitely character dependent. You know, I think something like Dogfight, for instance, you mentioned that musical, felt like it was dealing with a I don't know, a more complicated subject matter and a well, I mean, look, frankly, this isn't easier. I'll answer the question a different way. You quoted Greatest Showman, right? That was a film for a film studio that said this is a musical, but we want songs that everybody in the world can sing along to. So our job was write songs that can work for these characters, that feel like they resonate and can be truthful for these characters, but that also feel big and broad and universal. So we are theater kids and love telling stories through songs, but also have always loved pop music and sort of universal, everyone clap your hands and wave your hands and sing along, sort of anthemic music. And that was that gig. That was that assignment. And happily took it on and dove into it, and felt like that's something that I can do. I know that world of music, the pop world of music, but also can still make sure we're telling a story throughout and find lyrics that feel specific enough to the moments and to the characters, but also feel universal and can be taken out of context. And that was that show and that piece. Something like Dear Evan Hansen goes a little bit in between. It's more pop based, but also kind of like singer-songwriter, and there's some folky elements of it too, some rocky elements of it too. But that was, hey, we're going to sort of delve into some heavier subjects here. As it was mentioned at the top of this Zoom, we're dealing with mental health, mentions of suicide, etc. So we want to make sure the music feels really accessible, and that the music has elements of hope, and that there is a sort of uplifting anthemic element to at least some of the score, because we're going to be going to some darker places in the scenes. And so that was like a sort of conscious choice as we were composing it. Something like Dogfight, we sort of decided, okay, we're going to just live in the more complicated world throughout, and that was the choice. And it really, we had no sort of intention or mind toward accessible or not. It was just, let's go where these characters want to go, and want to live, and that was that.
About writing for movie musicals versus stage shows, a la Greatest Showman, La La Land. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of just curious about how the approach may or may not be different for a movie musical versus a stage show. And then also sort of the meta of it all is that Greatest Showman is rumored to also be in development for Broadway. So then the meta of like writing a movie musical for a film that then is adapted into a stage musical, and just like how that process works.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like, I think that like at the end of the day, more or less, I feel like the process, I feel like the sort of DNA of the songwriting, I think I couldn't separate out. I think it is like more or less the same, in terms of how we would approach writing a song for film versus writing a song for the stage. I guess the difference is a couple of things. You can go so many places so quickly in a film that I think that in a certain sense, it's weird. In a certain sense, the burden of the song to be always telling the story can be slightly less on a film song, because and sometimes should be a little bit less, because you're going to be watching storytelling as much as you're going to be listening to it and like hearing it and having it come at you, if that makes sense. Like, you can cut so often and so quickly, and you can go so many places in a film montage and a film staging of a song. You can. I mean, you don't have to, but you can. And so there's a danger that it could be overwritten, where like you're trying to tell so much story, but also seeing so much story at the same time. So it really just comes down to a question of who's telling the story, like who's carrying the ball, basically, of the storytelling. And I think that's what it's about at the end of the day, whether you're on stage or not. Something like Dear Evan Hansen is a great example, I think, because it's like we wanted to write a more pop-based score. I think that works better on film than on stage, unless you are working with the team, creative team, and you all discuss like, here's how we're going to do this. So we said with our creative team on Dear Evan Hansen for the stage show, we're going to probably have the second chorus, on the outside, always looking in. These lyrics are going to repeat. It's like a poppy theater chorus. They're going to repeat. But we were like, but that can only happen unless someone else is taking on the story, like moving the story forward. So it was a conversation from the beginning of that show, of that creative process, that staging, choreography, and especially projection design were going to keep evolving so that the story was always being told. So in a film, that would be a lot easier. You know what I mean? So like, in a sense, it's like, it is the same. It's just a question of who's carrying the ball. So we were still able to do it on stage. It just meant that it had to be a really conscious choice of who was telling the story at that time, since we were going to repeat our lyrics. I will say it's really hard in the way that you can have somebody sing a really emotional, like soliloquy down in one, like on stage, one person holding the moment. It's really tough to pull that off on screen. It can happen. We did it in La La Land. There's one moment in the show, in the film Audition, The Fools Who Dream, Emma Stone, but like the camera is circling and circling, and the lights go dramatic, and like you have to do a lot, and the actor has to be very compelling to pull it off. Whereas on stage, it's just much more natural.
So I have a question sort of in the other direction, which is, this is going to be a popular show in high schools. And I'm wondering when the first high school productions we might expect, and whether do you think the licensors will allow schools to like cast a bunch more extras so that more kids can participate? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Evan Hansen. Oh yeah. I am wondering the same thing of when it will be a high school show as well. There are now international productions happening, which is really great. I think there's a tour that's going out again in the fall, so I think they're still restricting high school productions. I don't know when. I think probably a few more years still, I think.
It's got to be popular.
What's that?
It's going to be popular in high schools.
I would love I mean, just frankly, because of what the conversations that it could engender around all the issues, I really am excited for high schools to get to do it. And there has been one international production thus far that has added, or that is talking about adding, a small group of folks to the cast. So I have a feeling they're going to figure out, or there's going to be discussions of how to add some more bodies on stage. Funny enough, right before we went to Arena Stage, we did a reading of Dear Evan Hansen. It had a full ensemble, and we cut the ensemble from the show because we felt it was just like it was wild. It was a very different thing, and we were like, that's not what the show is. And it really became like the internet was the ensemble. You know what I mean? This like sort of unseen thing, the community, that was like the point of it. So it'll be interesting to figure out how can we expand it again. Or is it a black box? Is it a smaller high school show? I don't know. We'll figure that out. But that'll be a conversation, and I'm really eager for schools to get to do it.
One of my longtime students, Drew Thompson, wants to know, what composer would you like to work with, living or dead?
Stevie Wonder, Ben Folds,
Okay.
Sting,
Wow. Wonderful.
John Batiste.
Stephanie had a question in the chat that I wanted to ask, which is how can we get more original musicals instead of jukebox ones?
I'm super curious about that question myself in terms of Broadway audiences and theater audiences at large, because what we're seeing right now, it feels like to me, and I'm curious, David, I'm curious anybody's feeling on this, is it feels like right now people really want to know, want to go see things that feel familiar to them, that feel like something they're going to, they know that title or they know something about it. And original musicals feel like a pretty big gamble. I feel really lucky to have written an original musical. No one knew what the heck that title, Dear Evan Hansen, meant when we first started. That's why we took a very long road and went out of town and then went off Broadway and then came to Broadway. And it was all like, we never said we're coming to Broadway. It's always like, if there is any demand for it, then we'll keep going on this road. But it's a big gamble for producers to take to support that kind of work. Certainly there are so many great initiatives right now supporting new voices and supporting new work, and that needs to continue. But ultimately, there has to be the audience appetite to take risk on going and seeing new shows by new voices that you've maybe not heard of, but that you want to check out. And so I don't know. What do you think, David? How do we have more?
I happen to like some jukebox musicals. I don't think it should be.
Me too. I have no issues with.
Right. We need both. We absolutely need both. And thank you to everybody for coming. 1 week from today, we have Michael R. Jackson talking about A Strange Loop. And a week after that, we're doing Les Miserables. Both classes are free. Go to thebroadwaymaven.com to sign up. And thanks to everybody for coming. Thank you so much, Mr. Paul.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Everybody. Bye, Catherine.
Bye-bye.
Please like and subscribe. Marquee, the Broadway Maven's weekly blast, comes out every Thursday. It includes piano talks, news, reviews, videos, Broadway blasts, quizzes, and more. Get Marquee for free and learn about all classes and projects at thebroadwaymaven.com. And here's a video I think you'll like.